Now, added to that, it's a very peculiar industry because the demand-supply situation varies. Shipping is a derived demand. It depends on international trade. If international trade goes up, then demand for shipping goes up. And if there's a recession, as we are now seeing, then the demand for supply goes down. And at the same time, it's extremely asset-heavy. You know, you have to invest in these ships. And once you're committed to that investment, you can't come out so much. Now, what are the methods that have been used for using excellence here? We have something, and some of it is even regulated, and, which is probably a good thing in an international industry, that you must have some kind of regulation. One of the things that we have is called the ISM, or the International Safety Management Code. Now, if you take the regulatory part of it aside and you just step back and ask yourself what exactly is the ISM? The ISM is nothing more than excellence in some other name. It is a constant striving of all the people involved up and down the chain to make sure that these ships run safely from one place to another. A ship has got many purposes. One, of course, is to transport goods, but more importantly, those goods have to be transported economically, they have to be transported safely, and they have to be transported without any damage to the environment. So in this larger endeavor, it is the theories and the practice of excellence, albeit in a completely different form, which actually makes this happen. And once you bring in excellence, then you find that there are a lot of positive results. There's an increase in productivity, there's an increase in profitability, and there is an increase in the quality of services. Now, having said all that, the shipping industry is also quite a broad industry, and some aspects of it in which we are now involved, which is container shipping, is the one in which is actually the retail part of shipping. The maximum number of clients the shipping has the maximum number of clients in the container terminal, in the container industry, because that's the reason we are dealing with a whole host of small shippers. And there, you can actually make a difference in the quality of your service. There, it takes a slightly different touch, and we teach excellence right down to even the smallest person in the entire hierarchy. Even the person who picks up the phone when you call a shipping company is actually taught that you have to strive for excellence, which means that you must pick it up in the second ring or maximum in the third ring, so that the customer doesn't get irritated. The customer doesn't have to wait. Now, if there is an inquiry, then we have to give what is called a holding reply. Within 24 hours, we definitely have to give a holding reply, so that the customer knows that, look, your query is actually receiving attention. And if I can reply what the customer wants within 24 hours, that's great. If not, the holding reply must at least tell them when I can reply it. So that there is a feeling from the customer, has a feeling that, look, somebody's paying attention to what I'm doing. And therefore, this constant endeavor to push yourself harder, to provide a greater degree of service, can actually be termed as excellence. And particularly this particular segment, Bionetwork of excellence, as has been brought out by Mr. Subramaniam, which deals with the humane factor of the old ecosystem of excellence, is particularly brought in here. Now, despite the fact that ships are very large, they're huge assets, and today a big ship, a VLCC, could cost upward of 400 to 450 million US dollars, a single asset which is floating. Despite that, I have always maintained that shipping is a people business. It's the people who are the primary assets. And the reason why they are the primary assets is that they are the ones who can make or break the enterprise, or what we call in shipping the journey, a voyage of a ship. The reason why we focus on excellence, although we may not call it by that particular name when we are on the ship, but the underlying principles are very, very similar to what earlier speakers have been talking to you about that. And despite the fact, the reason why I say that this is still a people business is because, as I mentioned, it is the people who will make or break the enterprise. And in shipping, we deal with each and every voyage separately, because each and every voyage, from the time the ship comes in to load its cargo, all the way to the time it discharges its cargo at the discharge port, that profitability of that, the manner in which that particular voyage is carried out, will actually determine whether that voyage is profitable and whether that particular enterprise is profitable. And it's not a very conducive atmosphere to be in. There is hostile weather conditions, and for the people themselves, you're always far away from home, you're in the company of strangers, and you visit strange lands, which very often with strange laws. That is becoming a serious problem. And some of the challenges seafarers today are facing are piracy, criminalization of seafarers, they're being taken and put in jail for minor offenses worldwide because of local laws. Despite all this, one important aspect that you will find is the seafarers themselves are motivated and they're competent professionals. And that comes because of this thrust right from the beginning, right from the training. The focus is on excellence. The focus is to motivate them to do better tomorrow than what they have been doing yesterday. And as one of the shipping companies very correctly put it, in our race for excellence, there is no finish line. This is a constant endeavor that goes on all the time. And I think all of us, frankly, we realize that too well. Now, the second segment of my experience has been in ports, and I'm right now heading one of the port companies here in Chennai. And that gives you an idea of what a port looks like. And if you see those huge big cranes there, the green colored ones, and the very complex technical machinery, extremely expensive. Typically a crane like that would cost upward of about $8.5 million US. And it weighs, the crane itself weighs more than 1,000 tons. And if you see this extremely complex machinery, it has to be operated by one operator who actually sits there, and this is called a key crane. It loads and discharges containers, which you see, those orange colored boxes there. Beg your pardon? Picture is not there. Okay, let me just rewind. Okay, you see this photograph of this beautiful ship there, and you see those cranes, which are called key cranes. They're huge monsters, very complex piece of machinery. And each of these is, as I just mentioned, more than $8.5 million US each. And they weigh more than 1,000 tons. And operating this in the cabin is one guy, the operator, okay? And he's aided by a team. There's a whole team of people on the wharf who help him to support and do this. But the important thing is, despite the fact that this industry is extremely asset-oriented, it's extremely driven by high capital expenditure, high capex as we call it. Despite that, I firmly believe that even the port industry is very much a people industry. It's the motivation of that guy there which tells me whether I'll get a gross crane rate of 23 or whether I'll get a gross crane rate of 30 or whether I'll get a gross crane rate of 35 for that particular shift, which will make my customer, the shipping line, happy or unhappy. And ports themselves, they're a heady mixture, as I mentioned, machines, men, and IT systems. And human resources and knowledge management, these two are the key elements which would make this enterprise successful. And therefore, it is very important for us to set up systems of excellence within the organization. That's the first thing that we do. And thereafter, to maintain it, we have threadbare review meetings in which even the smallest guy in the whole company is allowed to participate and speak his mind. Because it's from the bottom up that we will get knowledge and ideas as how to improve ourselves. And the second element is, of course, very important for us is the customer feedback. We always, at the end of every ship, every voyage, we go back to our customer and ask him, what is it that you were unhappy with us, or what is it that you were happy with us in this particular voyage? And then we see how we can improve it, okay? The industry has very specific characteristics which are quite different from other industries, and a general cookie cutter approach which is used in other industries may not necessarily work. One problem, of course, is the work is very repetitive. This ship goes away, another ship comes, and the same guy is doing the same job again and again. And we have to make sure that monotony does not dull the edges. We have several systems to do that. We have job rotation so that the guy is not operating the same type of crane. We have other cranes which do different functions. He operates that, and we rotate them so that they feel the higher, they feel a sense of belonging with the organization. And because of the very high cost, both of our own assets as well as the company's assets, we simply cannot afford the luxury of any downtime here. And therefore, excellence is the answer to all our problems. Human involvement is critical. As I mentioned, people are the backbone. They alone can make it happen or make it break. And Mr. Rajagopal, in his earlier speech, very correctly pointed out that it is the leader who must orchestrate this constant thrust towards excellence. And you to have this guy. He's in a senior position. He's causing a drag to everybody. The point I'm trying to make is, if there is no participation in the concept of excellence, which results in the overall organization suffering, then it might be necessary to do a little bit of surgery. Which once again brings us to the fact that excellence must be a very participative effort. And if some guy, for whatever reason, is not doing that, then we may have to take a different call. So just to sum up, excellence is extremely people-oriented. The thrust of excellence in an organization must begin with the leader. The leader must lead. There must be active participation right across the organization. And also rightly pointed out by David is that the shareholder may have different expectations, and I think he's bang on right when he says that that may not be the actual driver which drives people when they come to work early in the morning. So it's also a certain degree of balancing has to be done, because it's the shareholder, he has a very legitimate expectation of profit from the enterprise, and that's the key driver. Okay, and very often, particularly in MNCs, the decision making is very distant. The person who's making the decision is physically removed, is in a different geography, and very often he compares your unit in this port in India with some other unit which is in some other port in some other country. And therefore there is also a huge disconnect in the persons, because these two markets are not exactly the same. But one of the tools that helps us to bridge this gap, when I say us as heads of business units, one of the tools that actually helps us is the thrust of excellence. If you have excellence practices in place, driven, which are actually initiated by the leader, picked up with active participation from everybody down the line, then you will find that business not only makes better common sense, excellence not only makes better common sense, but excellence also makes better business sense. And therefore, right across the enterprise, in all our endeavors, the thrust for excellence is something that helps. And as I rightly pointed out, it is a journey without an end. Thank you.